Hello, everyone, and welcome to Power Nickel's Live Investment Summit today, hosted by Six. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker for today, Power Nickel's CEO, President, and Director, Terry Lynch. He's going to be walking us through a company presentation, and after, we're going to be going into a live Q&A session. So, just as a reminder, if you'd like to participate, please feel free to submit any questions you have to the chat found on the right-hand side of your screen at any time. And later on in today's session, we're going to be posting a survey link in the chat. If you click on that, you follow through and fill out the survey, you can indicate if you'd like to get in touch with the team afterwards. As always, this event is being recorded and it's going to be available on Six.com in the coming days. So if you need a refresh, look out for that. Without further ado, Terry, I want to pass things over to you so that we can get started.
Cam, thanks very much for the introduction. Looking forward to telling everyone about the Power Nickel story and in particular our exciting developments at NISC. We're going to basically build the world's first carbon neutral nickel mine. We'll walk you through how we're going to do that, why that's important. We're not going to tell you anything we don't believe is true, but as always, in junior mining and any stock, do your due diligence. In fact, let's jump here. Because I've been talking to investors in the last couple of months as we're getting our assays out, getting our story out, and I mean it's a psychology in the market is very negative right now. And I'll put this chart up, and it's like the key is where do you want to invest in a chart like this? You don't want to invest in the top left, and obviously, we're bottoming out. I mean, this is a TSXV index. I'm not talking about Power Nickel. I'm just talking generally speaking about the market. It's crap out there right now. But, if you believe in this whole energy transition at all the billions, indeed trillions that are being spent on the decarbonization, it's not possible that the mining sector is not going to have a massive boom. Now, is it going to happen tomorrow? Is it going to happen in a month's time? Is it going to happen in 6 months' time or 2 years' time? I don't know, but I can't imagine it being like worst case somewhere in that range between now and 18 months, and then there's going to be a multiple shift. Like we're going to go beyond what we did in 2008. It's going to go the whole index 3 or 4 times, 5 times where we're at now. And if you're on the we step back into this slide. The macro and the micro, the macro being the index, the micro being the individual stocks in the index. If you pick the right one, you're going to make, 10s and 20s and 50s and 100 times your money. That's the opportunity. And if you're investing in junior mining to make 20% or 40%, this is not the move. This is not the move. You got to look at these junior mining companies like Power Nickel and others that are out there, and see something that you think is going to be a 5 or 10x that you're convicted on, and you buy it, okay? And maybe you trade around a core position, okay? Maybe you can do that. But if you're trying to trade this thing for 20% swings, it's a dumb move. And too many people are, getting addicted to this trading stuff, and that's not the right. And when I'm trying to talk to new investors, I tell them, don't try and trade this thing. Be an investor. If you don't believe this thing is going to be worth 10x, move along. Find the one you do believe in and invest in that one, because that's how you make money in junior mining. And if you find one you like that you believe is going to be a 10x, then buy it now, because I can't predict. Nobody can predict when these things are going to start to run, because at some point soon they're going to start to run. And then if you're not already in with your position, you're going to have missed it. Okay, because these things don't trade massive volumes. So if you want to aggregate a position, unless there's a financing coming, there isn't one coming for us. You're just going to miss it. So that's my overall theory and commentary on the market. But I really think that's important, the psychology, because everyone's got a reason to be afraid. Oh, I'm going to wait. It's going to be a slow summer, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm just sick of it. I'm just saying to guys, wake the hell up. If you've got capital and you're not deploying it right now, you got to give yourself a head shake. This is the time to start to get into these positions, because you can't get into them massively. Otherwise, you're going to change the market. But start to fill it, because the market is happening. And what's interesting, that it's all been driven by the governments. The governments have made massive commitments. Okay, the U.S. government, with the Inflation Reduction Act, and it's providing incentive to producers and to consumers. Canada, has followed up, both federally and provincially. It's just unbelievable. It's mind blowing. In the last 6 weeks, while the Silicon Valley banking crisis was raging, everyone's attention was on that and the flight to security. I think Wall Street and Bay Street missed some of the biggest news ever in mining. The federal government's going to give a 30% tax credit to build new critical mineral mines. And Quebec followed up with giving 25%. So all of a sudden, 55% of your mine development costs and equipment is going to be paid for by a tax credit. I mean, that's mind-blowing. That's never happened before in history. So you look at a project like Power Nickel, that's going to be maybe 450 million to build a top-end nickel plant capable of producing end finished products, powders, anodes, wires, stuff that the EV world needs. Now half of that's going to be paid for by the government. Our market cap's 25 million. We're going to get $200 million. How does that not move the stock? Okay, but not just us, critical elements, NMG. I mean, look at some of these stocks in Quebec. Massively, they've got final feasibility. It's unreal. So Bay Street and Wall Street, you missed that. But hey, great opportunity for you to pick it up. It's there now. So on the micro side, as we move away from the macro that's supporting this, which is the government incentive packages to decarbonize our economy, you get into why do I like individual stocks and why do I like Power Nickel? So we'll walk you through that in the presentation, but the short form is this. We've made a massive nickel sulfide discovery. It's going to be big, okay? And we're going to show you how we compare with other nickel sulfide projects. I'm talking high, more than 1% nickel EQ, nickel sulfide projects. So I don't compare myself to Canada Nickel and Giga Metals, fine companies and fine projects, completely different animal than us. Those guys are multi-billions to put in production. They'll be relatively low IRRs. May make sense in this cycle. I hope they do. But they'll need, a different type of commitment from government and industry to move forward with that type of capital. But, projects like the high-grade nickel sulfides like Power Nickel, they'll be, returns will be north of 50%, possibly even 100% IRRs. These things are lucrative. So they're going to get financed in any cycle. Doesn't matter. If the EV industry didn't come along, this would still become a mine. That's how good this place is going to be. How are we going to show it? Well, we're going to basically be showing it through the assay results, which we've done. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to update our 43101. And, at that point, it'll become obvious that this thing's going to become commercial. And as you'll see, as we walk through the presentation today, this is just going to be a whopper. It's already going to be commercial on what we've discovered right now, but our land package is big, and we've already shown it's got massive potential. So let's get into the show. Where are we at? Well, we're in Quebec, and Quebec is arguably the best jurisdiction in the world to be looking to explore for critical minerals today. Why is it the best? Within Quebec, we're in sort of, I would call it central Quebec, but it's actually considered north from a economic standpoint. It's basically just south and east of James Bay. So Nemaska is up here on the chart. You can see it right here with my cursor. And the NISC project is 8 kilometers outside of the town. So we're 8 kilometers away from the regional airport. We're literally located off of Route North. So it's a beautiful highway there, right off the project. Across the street is the Hydro-Quebec substation. So Quebec's done a great job of setting up the infrastructure. So it's there. So it's going to be much more economic to develop a mine given the infrastructure is already in place. As a result of this, within this 100-kilometer range, there's 4 mines either built or being built. So Nemaska, East Main, Critical Elements, Galaxy Resources. So it's a very prolific region, but it's getting a lot of support. So if that happens in that region, what does it do for community risk? Well, it means that community supports mining. So the other thing Quebec did a really great job of was to, engage with the Aboriginal people, in this case, the Cree, and they work with them and they develop a relationship, and now they're partners. So for example, when our drillers are done, our crew is up there right now, just waiting to deploy our geodes on something we'll talk about in a second. And, they're staying at a Cree lodge, so we do a lot of business with them now, and that's part of the plan. You do business with your partners. So they're our partner, and Quebec has done a great job at engaging them. And as a result, community risk is not a problem. You look around the world at projects you're looking at financing, community risk is a big issue. So we don't have that here. Final, plank, for the Quebec being the best, it's of course the financial incentives, which I spoke to at the start. So not only are they, obviously going to help us build the mine with the tax credits federally and provincially, but they also help us explore for it. So we just did a financing, 6 weeks ago or so. Stock was 28 cents at the time we announced it. We did the financing at 50 cents. 50-cent unit at a share and a half warrant. Well, how did you do that magic? Well, it's basically using the flow through and tax credits and the charity buyback program, which sounds a little complicated, but we've done it twice. It's not that complicated, very easy to do. And what happened was we ended up getting end-use investors that bought the placement at 25 cents, but we routed it through the financial intermediaries in Quebec that gave the company 50 cents. And their investors basically saw their taxes reduced from 54% to 42%. So that was their win. The government's got their win because they got, $5 million put into critical minerals, which is what they want. So, everyone got their objective. We got a lot less dilution. We got capital to work with on our exploration program. And our investors that were putting in 25 cents, we're having 50 cents to de-risk the project. So it really is a phenomenal, investment technique. And obviously going forward, that'll be something we'll use extensively, because why wouldn't we? That just means that you're going to be able to advance this project with less dilution than on any project in the world. We titled the slide, "The World's First Carbon Neutral Nickel Mine." Why is that important? Well, there's numbers out there that they believe that, this cleaner nickel will yield higher prices. It's not just a fantasy. I've heard $2,000 a ton extra. So if you have a 20 million ton project, 2,000 a ton extra, that's a lot of bingo points. So clearly it's going to pay to, invest in this. And that's what it's about. So we've done some simple things, like we've offset our drilling. We've done it. There's a company in Canada called Carbon X. They're sort of going to be a leader in this space, I think. And we basically did their drill green program. Cost us an extra 25 cents per meter drilled. So, for 40,000 meters or so that we expect to drill ultimately this year, we paid 10 grand. Okay. It's a rounding error for what we're doing. But now we're showing that we're walking the walk. Okay. Second thing, obviously, we're in Quebec. So we got, cheap green hydropower across the street. It's going to be an electrified mine. A little bit of planning up front, electrified mines work fine. That can be done. The industry's moving to that direction. The second thing we're going to do is, it's an ultramafic deposit, so ultramafic deposits, akin to Lynn Lake, which was 22 million tons, and Voices Bay, which is over 50. And we think we'll be in that category. So the tailings from that deposit actually naturally sequester CO2. And if you actually hit it with oxygen before it goes out, it triples it. So there are ways to sort of, just by nature, we're lucky that we have the ultramafic, that we have the green hydropower. So that'll work. And then final thing will be the actual plant itself. There's probably three ways to really make nickel: smelting, hydrometallurgy, and chemical metal vapor process. So the third one is the most environmentally friendly, and that's what we're leaning to in terms of how we see it going forward. That would lead us to be able to have a carbon neutral nickel mine, and it may cost a little bit more up front, but the returns are going to be there. So we'll make more money, and that's why we're doing it. While we obviously want to do it for the environmental reasons, we're doing it because it'll make our shareholders more money and will give us a strategic competitive advantage. The environmental platitudes, set aside, if you don't have grade and tonnage, nothing else matters. In mining, you got to first have that. So let's talk about where we're at with that. We started with 3.1 million tons of about 1.6% nickel EQ. That was a great start. So then we had to verify that this historical resource was actually indeed accurate. We had no reason to believe it. It wasn't. It was discovered by Monarch Resources. They're a fine company, and Jean-Marc Lacoste was the guy. And I spoke to him before I bought this to get a background on it. And so I felt it was good. And indeed, the first set of drill results proved it. So this 8 holes, 7 of the 8 hit, verified that. It actually enabled us to post a 43-101 in August of last year at 4 million tons at $8 and 5 million tons at $9.60. We did that using the metallurgical study of the day that was done about 12 years ago. Unfortunately, if we were Canadian or Quebec or Ontario issuer, it wouldn't have been a problem. But because we were a BC reporting issuer, we had to pull that 43-101 because BC has a rule that says if the metallurgical study is more than 10 years old, you have to repeat it. We were going to do a full metallurgical study anyway. It's part of our, PEA, et cetera. So in fact, we're using XPS, pretty much the best in the business on that. We'll have it by the end of August. So anyway, that's why we don't have a 43-101 right now. It's current, but we pulled it. But of course, we know that was what we started with. And then we started to, drill our next 15,000 meters starting in last September. And I'm going to walk you through a series of releases of assays. Each one has a trophy hole. So this one in the middle, 2209, was 150 meters away from our updated resource. So a long ways away, adding a ton of tonnage, and 40 meters of almost 1.6% nickel EQ. I mean, that's a top 5 hole in nickel anywhere in the world last year. You can see, many of these holes are 1% nickel or better. We followed that up with 10 meters of 3%, 16 meters of 1.6, 14 meters of 1.5, including 7.5, 2.5. So this is a very rich site, and this is what it looks like. And these are sort of, we picked out 10 of the best intersections just to show you, how it looks. So this is a side view of the river of nickel. So this river is quite shallow, comes from the top surface down to about 200 meters, 250 meters. That's where the core of the ore body is. And this, we think, is just the first level. We think there's some, the deeper action, and maybe the better action is deeper. We'll walk you through that in just a second, but that gives you a view. This gives you a sort of a top view of how it looks. So you can see the intersections are sort of spread across the ore body. And we internally believe the math in this is going to allow us to post a 43101 in the 8 million ton range or north. And that will contain more than 100,000 contained tons of nickel, which is more than enough to make this commercial. Okay. And that's just the beginning. So every nickel sulfide mine in the history of the world has always been multiple pod. Okay. There's no reason to believe this will be anything other than that. So we've already had some pretty interesting stuff just working further on NIST West and further east here on the NIST Main. But we've also done some interesting stuff on this Wildcat target. So we're 5 kilometers down the road. We did this. We saw this ultramafic expression at surface, and we drilled it. It was a winter target, a bit marshy. So we said, okay, let's throw a hole in it now. And at 60 meters, we found 8 meters of almost 8 meters of 1 ounce palladium and platinum. I mean, that is a bonanza hole. That'd be a top 5 hole in the PGM world. We could be fashioning ourselves as a PGM deposit, not nickel. But it's indicative of, that happens in the really great, resources like Raglan that happened at Voisey's Bay and Norilsk. And, it's when you see that 5 kilometers out, and then we did this airborne EM that covers sort of about 7 clicks up here. And EM is actually one of the good techniques for nickel. It's not perfect because if there's graphite, that obstructs it. There's no graphite here in this case. And it only works to about 150, 200 meters. But, our core deposit was a light red. We've got some purples. Purples is what you want in this thing. So they're coming. So this thing is going to be big. And we think it's all connected. So this is going to be, like I'm saying, what's cool as an investor, you can look at this now and say, hey, they're super cheap based on what they found today, but their bones look really good. This thing could be massive. How are we going to find the rest of the stuff? Well, we're going to use traditional tools like airborne EM, downhole EM, IP, gravity, all that. But there's a new technique. It's called ambient noise tomography. And it's a pretty interesting approach. It was pioneered, I guess, by the Aussie company, Fleet Space Technologies. And they just finished a $50 million Schedule C round, oversubscribed. They're just killing it out there. They're having a ton of success. And what they're doing is, it's pretty hard to see. Maybe I could blow that up. So that little silver thing there is called a geode. So right now in northern Quebec, there's a whole package of these geodes that are about to be deployed on our survey. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to put it over our existing core deposit. And what that geode does, they're all connected. They put about 100 meters apart. They're wirelessly connected. We send a sound pulse down into the earth 2,000 meters, comes back, it's captured as a sound map. And those sound maps are then correlated to our drilling results, okay? So, for example, on that spot where we had the 40 meters of 1.6%, that's going to be correlated to a specific sound map. Same for the 10 meters of 3%. So those sound maps now become signatures that we can use, the algorithms to search, this database that we're gathering to say, hey, where are those other sound maps like that? Okay, so it becomes another tool to hopefully expedite your discovery process here. So how do we learn about this? Well, we learned about it because Talon Metals is using it in Minnesota or Michigan at the Tamarack deposit, which just spans the border there. And Elon Musk, we expect, brought it to them because he has the offtake there. And Elon Musk put these guys, satellites, in the sky. So what happens is the data is collected here, it's sent up to the sky, and they basically process it up there. And within a week, we're looking at our deposit. So within a week, within a couple of weeks here, we'll actually be looking at our current deposit. We'll see, hey, you noticed how squiggly that river of nickel was. Maybe we missed a bend or two, and maybe there's some cheap tonnage we can get down there. So that'll be great. The other thing it's going to do is it goes down to 2,000 meters. So we're going to start to say, hey, is there multiple levels to this river of nickel? Quite likely. And then, of course, we're going to be stretching it out. We're right now studying 1 square kilometer or 45 square kilometer package. There's a 7-kilometer length of the ultramafic that we've mapped out. So clearly we're going to, very closely examine that, especially with our, the airborne EM results, etc. So we're super stoked about what we think we're going to find here. We think there's going to be a number of great targets, and then we're just going to start drilling them up because, we're funded, we're ready to go. This, I think, is the money shot. So you either become an investor on this slide or you don't. This is where the mic drops, in my view. So when I compare ourselves to other high-grade nickel sulfide mines. So Noront paid, a little over 600 million Canadian for, Wyloo paid a little over 600 million Canadian for Wyloo, paid for Noront. Okay, that's sort of the top end. That was the price. Okay, now that project, wonderful, great bones, still a long ways away from development. Lots of hurdles there. You look at the rest of these projects, and you start to say, oh, God, 3 million, well, you can't really compare. But all of a sudden, if we're 8 or 10, it's like, okay, now we're talking. And, do you have the bones to go a lot further? Yeah, we do. So it's like right now we're trading at, a quarter to, a 20th of the value, okay? That's just not going to be sustainable. When we post our 43101, this thing is going to catch up. Because arguably, we're in location-wise, and infrastructure-wise and government support-wise, we're in the best location in the world, period. So this thing isn't going to be the laggard. It's going to be one of the leaders. And if you look at Talon, which is probably one we're most analogous to, that 259, that's for 60%. Because basically, I think Rio Tinto owns 40%. So the complex is probably worth around 400 million. So we're trading at about a 15th of that. I mean, this is just not sustainable. So that's why I'm very convicted on this story, and why you should be convicted too. This is going to be a 10-bagger, in my view, and it possibly could be a 100-bagger. And it's hard to sort of say that with a straight face, but it's because this thing's got bones. What's our action plan? Well, we're going to continue to do the same thing that we've been doing. We basically are going to continue to sort of identify our targets using the best science in the world, and then we're going to drill. And we're fully funded to do this next drill program. And we'll start drilling sort of mid-July, God willing, and the fire's abating. We'll release the metallurgical study in the end of August. And then we'll update our 43101 in September, we think, end of September. And then we'll ultimately deliver the a PEA or better by the end of Q2 next year. What do I mean by or better? Well, I mean, we've been approached, and it's likely that we'll do something with a strategic group, and they basically they want to do a feasibility study on NISC right now. They, in their mind, they believe it's a mine already. I don't know if you know this, but we actually post all of our drill collars in Asmus, so people can model this themselves, and we actually post our leapfrog so people can sort of see what we're thinking. And obviously, many industry participants have. We got 6 NDAs on the project right now with some of the biggest guys on the planet. And, I'm one of them stepping off the curb. And I think we'll do something with these guys shortly. And we're doing it because, the market's sort of not giving us any love or respect at the moment. So we have to keep moving this thing forward. And industry money is probably the best way at the moment. So it'll be an interesting deal in that they these guys are a top nickel producer, and they produce powders and anodes and nickel wire. And what's interesting about that market is they get triple the LME price. So we'll be making, we could make, and we'll have the ability to make the nickel sulfate, but we could, most likely we'll be finishing off making powders wires and anodes, finished products that will sell into the EV sector, the aerospace sector, the printing sector, the defense sector. These guys have tons of clients. They're coming up the chain because they need a source of supply. And this is the message. I don't know, it's that's been missing. Like it's weird to me that they're spending like $50 billion building these massive, battery plants all over Eastern United States and Canada, and they don't have the materials sourced to really fill those. And and mine is, they don't get into business that quickly. So there's going to be a major scramble, and there's going to be also lots of capital thrown at this to make it happen, because there's only so much you can do. So I think this inflection point is upon us, and I think for NISC, that's what we're going to do to sort of take advantage of it. Generally speaking, you would buy Power Nickel because you love the nickel deal. The neat thing is you're going to get some bonuses. The bonuses are not going to be inconsequential. They're going to be material. We're going to spin out our copper gold projects in BC and Chile. The first one will be the BC project. The yellow map you see over there is basically Mount Rainey overlooking the town of Stewart at the very start of the Golden Triangle. So the orange, over here, my cursor, is basically Scotty Resources, a very fine, one of my favorite junior golds. They got as many 50-gram gold holes as Great Bear at a similar stage in history. I like their bones a lot. This project that we're spinning out, called Golden Ivan, has never been drill tested, completely virgin ground. 3 half-ounce golds at surface. Scotty's got some great results close to us, and so does Strike Point. So we're going to spin it out. What's it going to be worth when we spin it out? We think it's probably going to be worth in the 10 to 15 million range. This slide may be a little bit old, but sort of in around that range right now. So we'll raise $1.5 million, $2 million separately from the Power Nickel purse, and that'll denominate the value of that package. And then 25% of that, whatever we receive share-wise, will be dividended out through a plan of arrangement to our shareholders. And then on the plan is every 12 months we'll be dividending out, and so it'll be we'll create a bit of a dividend play, and that will allow that company to sort of find its feet. And then what we'll do is, Chile is quite interesting. We'll end up moving our Chile packages to the NewCo through we'll do a fairness opinion on what that's worth, and they'll buy it for stock, and that'll go in. And again, that stock will come out over the next 3 years to our shareholders. And let's talk about Chile for a second. Chile obviously went through some issues with the whole unsettled political scene down there, and nationalization, etc. Generally speaking, we stopped investing there, but now we're going to move forward, in a way. And the reason why we're changing our mind is they defeated the Constitution down there, which was great. They've also got the Senate changed, which is sort of controlling how far this current president can go. And I suspect he's a bit of a lame duck. So I think Chile will come back to normal, to being a great jurisdiction. And, for us, what's interesting is there's been a technical game changer for Chile. Most people have no idea. But this ambient noise tomography, its biggest use, the technology we're using, at NISC to help us find nickel, its biggest use is in West Australia, in the desert there. And they're finding copper and lithium with this tech. And one of the reasons a desert, you can look at this picture, obviously the desert exploration is where we're at. We've got serious land packages in Chile, but they're in the desert in the Atacama. And basically there's a mineralized limestone called caliche that sits in the sand. It obstructs obstructs signals. So IP and gravity, which would be normally great guides for regional geographic programs, it doesn't work very well down here. So as a result, it's expensive to explore in the desert. But this ambient noise tomography sees through this and can give us, for the first time, a very good regional picture here. So we think that's going to be a game changer for exploration in Chile. And so when we're done with them up at NISC, we're shipping the geodes to Chile to basically roll out down there. And that'll ultimately end up in our sister company that the shareholders of Chile or Power Nickel will be the beneficiary of. So we're quite excited about that. Last asset to talk about before we get to a summary is our royalty. We sold a project to Teck for $3 million and a 3% NSR. They can buy 1% back for $3 million. So we're looking at transacting on that royalty now. We're talking to a couple of royalty companies, one in Chile and one here. And we expect to hopefully do something in the next, by say sort of sometime in Q3, and probably generate like $5 million or so. And yeah, it's worth more, but it's like, right now cash is king. It's less dilution for NISC. And if we believe NISC is going to be a $1 billion asset that we truly believe it will be, then it makes sense to do that. So that's a nice little kicker bonus for us. It's got an experienced team here. We kept it very lean because you didn't survive if you weren't super lean. So, for example, our geological team is GeoVector. The GeoVector is led by Joe Campbell and Adam Finley and Eric Herbert and the team, and they've done amazing work for us. You couldn't buy these guys, but we can rent them. It's actually tax efficient for us to do so. And they've led the Resurrection and Ken Williamson over at 3DGO as well. So we've had a really great tight team, and that's been working very well for us. We use Apex in Vancouver to do the same thing on the Golden Triangle project. In Chile, we can operate directly through Jimena. So we're quite lean, and we're now probably start to ramp up as we start to move, especially as we start to move through a feasibility study. We're about to make some hires in that respect, but it's been lean at this point. Board's been super supportive. Greg was ex-MD at Haywood, and he's in the mining sector now. Very sharp guy, knows the space. Peter is a retired corporate lawyer, very savvy, lots of good advice there. And Les has been a successful businessman. And the board owns about 4%, which is great for a board these days. If you look at the key shareholders, you'll notice that there's 5 or 6. So we have about 50% of the company, a little bit more. And generally speaking, each of the last 2 financings have been done by the key shareholders, 65, 70%. So the guys that know the deal the best are buying the most. So it's a good sign, I think. Obviously, this is the sort of the corporate structure. So just summarizing before we get to questions, I think number one, we've made a major nickel sulfide discovery. Okay, we're trading at a deep discount to our peer group. The drill results are excellent. It looks like there's a great base to grow here. We've employed some of the top technologies available to identify and allow us to ramp up. So this thing is going to be heavy on the news flow, and it's obviously good. Investing, it's always good to invest with companies that are generating lots of positive, real material news. So we're definitely doing that. We're funded for a 15,000 meter program, which is going to start in I guess July 24th. That's the date. We expect to find significant new pools. We expect to ultimately deliver a resource somewhere between a Lynn Lake and possibly a Voisey's Bayside. So 20 to 50 million tons. Those are bold claims, but if you sort of see yourself at 8 on the first pod with upside, and you see multiple pods coming, I mean, that's just the math. We're in a great complex, right? It's not just nickel. This is a polymetallic discovery. That's what's so exciting. And so we've got we'll be able to get revenue from copper, cobalt, and the PGMs. And it could be significant. I believe we'll have more than 1 million ounces of PGMs at the end of the day, maybe a couple million. So, I mean, again, that's just super sexy as an investor. The spin-offs are potentially highly lucrative. I mean, we haven't had a copper gold exploration market. I think in the fall we can start to see one. And because of the new technologies that are out there and our connections to them, I think we can really do something with it. So it's pretty interesting, and I think that thing will have a lot of hops. And again, it's a bonus. It costs you nothing. Most of you have no clue that we even have that. The final thing I leave you with is we're certainly in the best jurisdiction in the world for critical minerals. We've shown how we can work within the jurisdiction. We've got a great relationship with the Quebec government. They've been fantastic to work with. The Quebec financial community has been great to work with in helping us, finance efficiently. We expect to do more of the same. So, I mean, at that, I mean, I'd like to sort of turn it over for questions, and we're super pumped here at Power Nickel and happy to answer anything you have generated in this conversation. We'll go from there. So, Cam, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Terry, for going through the great presentation. And yeah, as he said, folks, now is the time. If you have any questions, please feel free to submit them. Just do so in the chat on the right-hand side of your screen. Terry, to get started, though, we have a question from Michael, and he's just wondering, how effective are the tailings at absorbing CO2?
Yeah, there's a fair bit of science on that now. It's pretty much irrefutable that the ultramafic tailings, naturally absorb CO2. And then if you hit them with oxygen before they go out on the tailing ponds, it'll absorb triple the amount of CO2. So fair bit of study done on that. And we've talked with people like Carbon X about that. We believe that if we, and we probably would do so, that you could generate carbon credits as a result of this, and ultimately, there's a market for those. So, whether we would need them ourselves or not, ultimately the feasibility study will sort of determine that as we do our carbon assessment as well. But that's my comment on the CO2.
Oh, fair enough. Absolutely. Michael has a follow-up question. He's just wondering, is this a comatite hosted type nickel deposit? And is there gold mineralization around?
It's an ultramafic deposit. I'm not a geologist or a geoscientist, so I really couldn't comment on that specific mineral that he mentioned. If it's there or not, it's not one that rings a bell to me from talking with the guys. I could check into that and get back to him. And then gold, not a lot. Obviously we assay for gold, and in that PGM hit there was some gold, so it's likely there may be something out there. But there's lithium, and there's a whole other thing there that we'll get to at some point. But we've definitely seen some pegmatites and gone through some, on the way to the nickel. So, but no, gold is not really a primary target, even though we do assay for it.
No, absolutely. Adrian's question is this: are the short positions on power nickel changing? Are they going up, down, or are they not changing?
You know what? I think to a large extent they're continuing to go up moderately. Basically, we've got a process going on right now where we basically we hired. Excuse me. Sorry about that. We hired a company called Share Intel, and they're like an accounting firm, but they have a very special technique. And it took about, I don't know, maybe 3 months for this all to get set up. We've done gathered share data from CDS, Broadridge, the DTCC, and over 8 weeks we've done snapshots on 4 specific trading days, and we identified what's called share imbalances, aka naked shorts, and because we look at these share imbalances and they're obviously doesn't correlate to any disclosed short position. So maybe these guys have organized borrows that we're unaware of. So here's what we did: is as a result of this new data that we sent out 10 days ago, letters to the compliance chiefs of those brokerages, 7 of them, that said, hey guys, here's this data that we've collected. It's 100% accurate. It's irrefutable in a court of law. And it shows there's a serious trade imbalance persistent at your firm. And do you have an explanation for how that is so? So, and we're continuing to monitor this. So in about another week, we'll be sending out a follow-up letter with an additional report that we're monitoring on that. And basically what we've done is we've started the liability clock for these guys, because if they're actively suppressing our stock, which is our view, they're causing damage to our shareholders. And now before they could have said, oh, we didn't know, we missed it, blah, blah, blah. Now it's no BS all aside. You're on notice, okay? And if you continue to carry on with this malfeasance, then we're going to reserve the right to take action. So so that's where we're at on the shorts. I mean, at the end of the day, these guys are a goddamn annoyance across the space, and our government's lack of action is appalling, to say the least. The Aussies are eating our lunch because they deal with it a lot more sharply. They make you deliver, or they buy you in, and it's just disgusting. Now, for power nickel, it's a piss off and makes me angry that we're having to do this, but this thing's so good and industry wants this so bad, we're going to power through this one way or the other. Like these guys are going to get massively killed, but in the interim, they're a real pain in the butt.
Okay, fair enough. Jack's wondering, are you aware of what Canada Nickel is doing with sequestration, and are you planning something similar?
Yeah, we've obviously been following their good work there. They've done a lot of great work. Mark and his team is certainly top tier, and they're fine. And we've talked to the some of the other scientists involved, and believe that technology is definitely going to be part of the solution for projects like that, and for projects like ours. Like you definitely want to do everything you can to minimize your carbon footprint, and in some cases, it may be possible that this becomes a revenue stream for these nickel projects. So we're certainly looking at that, and that would be part of our design process.
Okay, fair enough. Well, listen, Terry, that looks like all the questions that we received for today. So I want to thank you for going through such a great presentation. And of course, I want to thank everyone who's joined us, especially those who have asked questions. There is a survey in the chat. If you'd like to get in touch with the Power Nickel team, feel free to fill that out. But before we wrap up for the day, Terry, I want to pass things over to you for any closing remarks that you might have.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I think, I opened up with a bit of a dissertation as to why now is a great time, if you have fresh powder, to be deploying it, not just on Power Nickel, but into many fine junior mining companies who are trading at massive discounts. This thing is going to turn, and you guys can be part of that turn and benefit greatly from it. And I think it's time to, this is the summer where you should be just soaking these shares up, because this thing is going to start to rip. I don't know exactly what's going to be the catalyst, but there's never going to be an EV revolution if these junior mines don't get funded, and we're not getting them funded down here. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen soon, and the smart money is starting to buy now. So be smart. Talk soon. Have a great day.